Christian Parenting.
Welcome to the Christian Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Steph Thurling. I'm the Executive Director of Christian Parenting, a mom of 3, and I am so glad that you're here. This is a place where you can bring your real self, no matter what that looks like today, and be given the space, resources, and encouragement you need to set aside perfection and grow into the perfectly imperfect parent God made you to be. Did you know that Christian Parenting has an entire online store filled with resources created to help you confidently raise your kids to follow Jesus? And today, we want to offer our podcast listeners a special 15% off discount when you use the coupon code PODCAST2024 at checkout. Our Christian Parenting store is filled with products for both parents and kids. These resources will help you pray for your kids, walk through life's ups and downs, and develop great faith habits at home. We have everything from prayer journals for parents, family discipleship tools and activities, and a variety of books. We also have products just for your kids like devotionals and scripture-based cards to stick in their backpacks. We truly consider it an honor to provide you and your family the resources you need to build a strong faith foundation. So you can visit christianparenting.org/store to see everything that is available. And make sure you use the coupon code PODCAST2024 at checkout to get 15% off your order. Hey everyone, today I have the privilege of being joined by Pastor Max Lucado to talk about his latest children's book, Just in Case You Ever Feel Alone. Pastor Max is a father of adult kids and a grandfather, but he wrote this book with his young kids in mind to remind them that their feelings of loneliness and uncertainty are normal and that God is with them all the time, no matter what. Pastor Max is full of wisdom, gentle encouragement, and truth, and today we discuss the importance of family, creating quality time with our kids. And we talk about the epidemic of loneliness in our world and helping kids deal with emotions like loneliness and fear and anxiety. And then we also cover finding a balance between busyness and spiritual growth by spending time with God. I hope that you leave this conversation feeling encouraged. I love what he shares about finding the root of our feelings and replacing them with truth. I think that's really helpful and gives us some practical and powerful language to use with our kids. So make sure you listen for that and enjoy. Hi, Pastor Max. Welcome to the Christian Parenting Podcast.
Well, you are very, very kind to allow me to be a part of your conversation, and hello to you and hello to all your listeners.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you here today, and we're going to talk about your new book, your children's book. We're going to talk a little bit about loneliness, all sorts of good things, but I always like to start with my 2 regular questions to get to know you a little bit. So can you tell us about your family, and then can you describe your family in one word or phrase?
Well, my wife and I got married in 1981, so if my math is correct, we're 42 and a half years into this adventure called marriage. And she's still my sweetheart. She really is. She's a delight. I wish you could meet her. She's a lot of fun, full of energy, very health conscious, loves to pray. She's increasingly catching up with my travel interest. I've always loved to travel. We used to live overseas. We lived in Brazil for many years. But for a long time, she just didn't like the idea of leaving home. She's a serious nester, but we found some things that we love to do. And so we're doing a little bit more of that. Our kids are all having kids of their own now. My oldest daughter has 2 children plus a foster child. My second daughter has a 6-month-old, and my third daughter is due at the end of this month. And so a lot of grandchildren activities taking place. I think the one word that would describe our family is music. Everybody in our family loves music, and I just feel like it's a symbol of the harmony in our home, the happiness when everybody is together, which is sadly rare since we're also spread out. We don't live in one city. But when we are together at holidays, it's just a happy occasion. It really is. And so I'm very, very grateful. I love my sons-in-laws. Um, they're going to be great dads and they're great husbands. And so it's a good time. It's a good time for
Yeah.
us.
Such a blessing to have son-in-laws come in that you enjoy and can add like a good balance to your family.
Well, that's why I love programs like yours because you're reminding all of us to make family our number one priority. And there's
Mm-hmm.
so many activities and demands tugging for our attention. It takes a very deliberate choice on the part of a parent, husband, and wife to make family number one.
Yeah. And it's hard sometimes for sure. So, yes. Yeah. Okay. Maybe that was the answer to the next one. But if not, maybe you can add to it that what is one thing you want every parent to know?
What's that old line that children um, spell love with four letters, Time?
Mm.
I really found that to be true raising our kids, you know. And I remember when I discovered that there's a bit of a myth around this whole idea of I'm just going to spend quality time with my kids. I don't have a lot of time, but the time I have is going to be quality. And that sounds good, but I found that, you know, if you don't have quantity time, quality never happens because
Mm.
yeah, you can't force a child 6, 7, 8 years of age to just be in the mood to give all their attention to mom or dad or grandma or grandpa. That happens only when you're just with them for an extended period of time. I think that's why I'm a big proponent of taking off the work hat when you come home at the end of the day, and putting that parent hat on, and
Mm.
realizing that you've got just a certain amount of time with these kids, and being available to them, letting them see you and smell you and hear you and know you, knowing you're right there. That's a that's a wonderful thing.
What are some of the things that you did when your kids were at home, when you took off your work hat and put on your parenting hat that you felt
Yeah.
like made an impact?
Yeah, what we did, I was in charge of we had what we called the piranha hour, and that's when everybody wanted a piece of mom. And I thought I could really help at that hour, right about 5 o'clock, 4:30 or
Mhm.
5 or 5:30. And I got very protective of my evening schedules, which is not always easy for a pastor because many
Mhm.
things happen in the evenings. But it would have to be a pretty important meeting for me to not be home in the evening. Um, and my job when I came home, again, I'm thinking of the kids when they were all, you know, let's say 1, 3, and 5. Okay. So my job would be to just kind of take over. I was in charge of playtime. Depending on the time of the year, we might go on a bike ride, we might go out to the swings, might go swimming. But we would have some wonderful playtime. And then I was in charge of bath time. And then I
Mm.
was in charge of story time. And I love the story. In fact, most of my kids' books, Steph, come out of stories that I made up with my kids or for my kids.
I
And
love
so
that.
that period, that block of time from, let's say 5 o'clock until about 8 or 8:30, until they were in bed and asleep, uh,
Mhm.
that was just in. I wouldn't give that to anyone else. That was really really special for us. And when I talk to the girls, they still remember that. Now I make it sound like it was perfect. It wasn't. We got interrupted a lot, and there were times I had to not be available, but
Mhm.
the priority, the resolve was there, and it paid great dividends.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like that actually ties really well everything you're just saying into your book, just in case you ever feel alone, because the concept of the book is talking about how parents are available to their kids and how God is always with them. And it's really just addressing loneliness. And I feel like it's a very timely book because there's definitely an epidemic of loneliness going on in our world. And it feels like we should be more connected than ever because in some ways we are, but we're also really distant. Like, why do you think that is?
Well, I think the the connection is really distraction. We're not
Mm,
necessarily connected through social media or through screen time. It's a poor substitute for true connection. And so it's possible that we're raising a generation of young people who haven't been trained. They simply don't know how to have a heartfelt conversation, to
yeah.
go deeper. You can't have a conversation, with a smartphone, and social media is a is no conversation with someone else. And if your entire connection with everybody else is done either through phone calls or text messages, it's going to be woefully short. And
Mm,
sometimes I wonder what's going underdeveloped as we spend so much time on our smart devices. The beauty of a
yeah.
book, by the way, of course, I've written books my whole life, and the beauty of a children's book is that it gives parents or grandparents language that they can use to communicate the promises that they want their children to hear. For example, this book, just in case you ever feel alone, all I did was write down what I would tell my children to help them so they wouldn't feel alone. And when we read these words to our children, they hear it from our voice, they feel it in our embrace, they see it in our face. There is a healing that happens there that is priceless. It's just priceless. And so the purpose of a book is just to help parents have the right words to say to their kids so their kids will hear these words of affirmation. If you ever feel alone, don't worry, I'm here and God is here and we'll be with you just in case you ever feel alone. And repeating that, affirming that with children, again, I think it's just beyond, we can't put a value, can't put a price on
Yeah. Well, and I love that it's for younger kids too, because you start those conversations at a young age. So they're ingrained in them. Because the reality is, our kids are going to feel lonely. Like they just are at a young age too. Like kids get left out of things. They don't get invited to the birthday party, or they don't have a
that.
friend in
Hmm.
their class, or so many things, or they just feel lonely just because they
Hmm.
do, because we're human. And I think so often as parents, we want to like protect our kids from that emotion and make sure that they don't. Like we want to fix it. Like if they don't get invited to the birthday party, we want to fix that problem. We don't want them to sit in the uncomfortable emotion, even though they kind of have to learn. So how can we walk our kids through loneliness? And then how can we talk to them about our presence and God's omnipresence in their life to really like make sure they understand this?
Yeah, yeah. And these are great questions. You do such a great job, Steph. Thank you so
Oh, thank
much.
you.
You
Well,
know,
these are questions I really have about my own kids. I want to
yeah,
protect them from all the things. Like,
absolutely.
yeah.
You know, I'm not a therapist, but I am a pastor, and I've had far more than my share of conversations with people about the emotions that they're feeling, uh, grief, anxiety, dread, regrets, guilt, shame. These are all emotions that we feel. And when I talk to people who come to talk to me, um, I think what I tell them is exactly the same thing I told my children. Feelings are feelings. They're not right. They're not wrong. They're just emotions. And 1,001 things can create feelings. Even the weather, hormones, the mood of people that you with whom you work. And so don't beat yourself up because of a feeling. But when you have a feeling, here's what you do. You trace that feeling back down to a root cause. For every fruit, there's a root. What's the cause of this emotion that I'm feeling? Why is it that I'm so anxious today? It could be something that's happening. Could be you're getting a lot of bad news. Could be you've been listening to too much news. So try to trace it back to a root, and then make sure that the uh, root is replaced by a truth. A truth. Untruth leads to a false narrative. An untruth might be, I really am all by myself. Nobody cares about me. Well, that's an untruth. And if you let that take root, it's going to create a false narrative that could lead to some consequence of dealing with those emotions in an unhealthy way. So again, the purpose of this book, or the purpose of any children's book, hopefully, is to give a truth that you can deposit deep in the heart of your children, and that truth will bear healthy fruit. Yeah, I didn't get invited to the party, but you know what? I still belong to God. I still have a beautiful family, and I'm not going to let somebody else's you know, guest list determine my emotions, which are beginning to help children mature. We call that maturity, or get insight or wisdom. That's what I do with grown-ups, and I think it still works with kids. Help. You got this fruit. What's the root? Replace that root with something that's true.
Yeah.
You deserve a tech career you love, coworkers you can count on, innovation you're proud to build. If you're ready to change the world through technology, explore a career at Cox. Make a real impact in engineering, development, cybersecurity, and more, all while experiencing work-life balance, flexible work options, and great benefits. Visit cox.career/tech to find a job you love today. That's cox.career/tech.
Grandma, can I have the chocolate chips?
This secret recipe moment made possible by Emory Heart and Vascular Center. When Grandma needed heart care, she came to Emory. The difference? Emory Healthcare performs more heart procedures annually than anyone else in Georgia, which means better outcomes for our patients. And we offer advanced and personalized treatments developed by our top specialists that others don't. Like Grandma knows, where you start your heart care matters. Smart Cookie. EmoryHealthcare.org/Smart Cookie.
I like that you pointed out too that there aren't like right or wrong emotions. Sometimes I get stuck in that. Like I feel like if I feel anxiety or if I feel something negative, I kind of start to panic a little bit and I feel almost shame from feeling something bad.
Yeah.
And then that's like a whole cycle. Then you get stuck.
Yeah, we feel bad for feeling bad, don't we?
Yeah, we do, because we're supposed to be like joyful all the time. And but emotions and feelings, I always say feelings are liars. Like we can't base our decisions off of feelings.
Absolutely. Sometimes you got to take your feelings outside and just give them a good talking to. They don't behave. So don't let your feelings, that's the tail wagging the dog, Don't let your feelings control you. But let your emotions be governed by truth. Again, that's what we're trying to help our kids see. The fancy phrase for all this, Stephanie, of course, is worldview. Do you have a biblical worldview? Are we giving our kids the assurance? A biblical worldview says there is a God, and that God is good, and that God is involved, and that God is preparing us for a life to come that will so far outweigh any problem or pain we've had to endure. That's the worldview that we're trying to live with in our own lives. And when that worldview is wrong, it creates wrong actions or decisions. And so, again, focusing on creating that right worldview, teaching and affirming that to our children. What's interesting, this book, just in case you ever feel alone, is really a descendant of a book I wrote nearly 30 years ago called Just in Case You Ever Wonder. And it was a verse we mentioned earlier. I was in charge of the kids every evening. And I created this little rhyme that I would say, I don't want you to cry, but if you do, that's okay. And just in case you ever wonder, I'll be here to help you. And I decided I'm going to write all that down. And I sent it to my publisher and it became a book. Well, all I was trying to do was assure my children with good words that they would never be where I would not love them. And just in case you ever wonder, I still do. I'm rambling now, forgive me, but that's where all this came from.
No, you're not rambling at all. I love that. I think that our world is so full of bad words, of negative words. And so the more of the good words of God's truth that we can pour into our kids starting at such a young age, there's so much power in that. And there's so much power in stories too.
Yeah.
Like they can learn so much from it.
Last Sunday at church, I preached, and the text was 2 Corinthians 10:5. We take every thought captive. We take
Mm.
every thought captive. And this idea that we can take our thoughts captive, for some people, it's a new thought. They think, well, if I have a thought, I'm supposed to think it. I'm supposed to let it take root in my thought process. But that's not necessarily the case. These thoughts, they come at us from a variety of sources. And you don't have to think it just because it comes at you. You can close the door on that thought. I remember when my children were small, uh, one of them really was struggling with negative or fearful thoughts. And I taught her, I said, well, honey, just reach up and grab the thought and pull it out of your head and throw it in the trash. And one day I came home and there she was grabbing, putting her hand up by her head. And she was pulling a thought out, throwing it in the trash. That little exercise, first, that truth is important to teach. And that exercise helped us put it into practice.
I feel like that's something you learn straight in therapy too. Like I have been in counseling on and off for most of my adult life. And it was dealing with anxiety. It was my therapist was like, have a little treasure box. And when you're feeling an anxious thought, like, what are you going to take that thought and put it in the box and close it up from now, revisit it later if you need to. But like sometimes kids just need a visual like that. Helps them process things. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, adults do too.
Yeah.
I think sometimes when I am feeling negative or I'm feeling lonely, when I like reflect on the situation that I'm in, I realize that my closest, most important relationship, which would be my relationship with Jesus, is lacking in that moment. Mm-hmm. And because to have a relationship with God, you have to spend time with him every day. And in this season of parenting, sometimes it's just really, really hard because you're really, really busy. And I know I'm not alone in that struggle of sometimes there's seasons where your relationship is up and down because you have more or less time to be spending with the Lord. So what would your encouragement be to parents who are busy, who sometimes feel like, oh, I want to feel closer to the Lord because I feel lonely right now? Like, what would your encouragement be to those parents?
Yeah. Can we go back to that fruit and root analogy? What is the root of your busyness? What is it that is causing you to, wake up and run until you fall asleep at night? Is there something behind it? And that's not a trick question. I mean, it could very well be this is a busy season. It's a very busy season, at work. Maybe, things get crazy in this particular quarter. And so your answer can be just, okay, right, I acknowledge this is a busy time. I ask the question, though, because sometimes we're busy for the wrong reasons. Maybe we're trying to accumulate a lot so we'll impress others. Maybe we just feel like we have to be busy because our value is based on our performance. So this is something that, again, it sounds like a therapy session, but you're trying to figure out why you're so busy. And it could very well be you can dial back this busyness in a way that will create windows of time. You don't have to do everything. Could be you're busy because, well, you feel like, you're going to lose your job if you're not, if you don't have the appearance of being busy. So trace it back to its source and see if you can deal with the cause of this frantic schedule. More times than not, we can dial it back and create, that breathing space so that we can spend time with the Lord and time with those we love.
Yeah. I think you are right. There are so many times that our busyness is because we feel like we have to be busy. Like busyness is almost a competition. Mm-hmm. Whose kids are in the most things.
When my kids were small, I did not do well at staying off the road. I was under the impression that if somebody invited me to speak in an event, I was obligated to say yes. It was a tough year one year when my children were small. My wife, and she's talked about this publicly, so I can talk about it. My absence contributed to her depression. And and one time I came in from a trip, and she was just mentally exhausted. We had 3 small children, 2 of them in diapers, and Max was nowhere to be seen. And so she went to a therapist, and a therapist, with the help of good counsel and some medication, she got balanced out again. But my takeaway from that was, I don't have to travel. Why am I doing this? And I realized that I was doing it more out of a sense of, self promotion than helping others. I got off the road, and for 7 or 8 years, I mean, unless it was something that even Deanlin felt, my wife felt I should do, I just didn't go. And that's what created that time for me to have with the girls, that I look back and I say, man, I'm so glad I did that, because the fruit is worth it.
Yeah. What a gift, too. Even though I'm sure that was a hard decision to make and probably hard conversations to have with your wife, but the result was such a gift in that time, the quantity time, not the quality time that you're able to get.
Yeah, the thing about it, our kids will never say, hey, Dad, could I have more time with you? They don't know how to articulate it like that. And when we get these calls to, make more money or make a presentation, we feel, flattered. It puffs up our chest. I think it must have made I'm going to go do that. So our children, they've not been taught, and they shouldn't have to say, oh, would you please come and hang out with me? We need to just be there and let them sense our presence. And that, more than anything else, will be a source of comfort to them.
Yeah. It shows that they're not alone, that you're like willing to sacrifice things for them. Mm-hmm. And I think as parents, we know that we're willing to sacrifice literally anything for our kids, but how often do we actually show them that? And that's convicting.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Me thinking about that.
Yep.
Okay, before we go, can you just tell us, what is your hope for parents and kids when they read this book together?
I pray that as parents and kids read this book together, it will provide a sense of assurance for both parents and kids, that truly God never leaves us alone. He's ever present, always near. He's as close as your next thought. And his shepherding presence will truly be enough to get us home at the right time and in the right way. Yeah.
Thank you. It is a beautifully done book, and the words are so powerful and precious. So I think that parents and kids will get that together. And I love the emphasis on teaching them that from a young age, because that's going to make it stick. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been a delight.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you have a wonderful week with your families, spending both quantity and quality time together. May God bless you this week. May you feel His presence in every moment. And may you remember that He is closer than your next breath, and you are never truly alone, because He is always with you. Thank you so much for listening to the Christian Parenting Podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you love this podcast, would you please consider leaving a review and sharing it with a friend? This is the best way to reach more people and encourage even more parents. Christian Parenting is a donor-funded ministry, and we rely on friends like you to keep podcasts like this going. So to find out more about Christian parenting and to make a donation, head over to christianparenting.org or at christianparenting_org on Instagram. Thank you again. See you next week.
You deserve a tech career you love, coworkers you can count on, innovation you're proud to build. If you're ready to change the world through technology, explore a career at Cox. Make a real impact in engineering, development, cybersecurity, and more, all while experiencing work-life balance, flexible work options, and great benefits. Visit cox.career/tech to find a job you love today. That's cox.career/tech.